Well, good evening, Christian women communicators of color. It is me, Kia Stevens, with our guest, Chrystal Hurst. What's up, Chrystal?
Hey girl, how are you?
I am excited, y'all. I'm stoked. It's been hard for me to keep this from you guys, but finally it's out and we are here. And so we're going to dive into this conversation because I know Chrystal has so many great things to share with us. Let me just give you a little bit of her bio, just in case you've been under a rock and you've never heard of her. No, I'm just kidding. Not under a rock, but I'm just saying. Anyways, Chrystal is an energetic, fun loving girl next door who loves to encourage other women in fulfilling their potential in Christ. Chrystal firmly believes God's promise is in Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. And if you listen to her, you know she is constantly pumping out hope for your future. And she desires to help other Christian women believe and apply that truth to their lives. Chrystal is a gifted writer. I just finished this book. She's still there. Speaker and worship leader who is sought after all over the country as the eldest child of Dr. Tony and Lois Evans. She has been surrounded by the Word of God her entire life. Chrystal is a member of Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, where she assists her mom in leading the women's ministry, in addition to serving in her local church. She is also a Proverbs 31 ministry writer and speaker. She hosts a weekly podcast, which is awesome. If you guys are not listening, you need to start today. She entitled Crystal's Chronicles, where she poignantly reflects her thoughts about her faith and day-to-day experiences. And she has co-authored the book Kingdom Woman with her dad, and then her recently released book, She's Still There, Rescuing the Girl in You. Most importantly, she is a wife and a homeschooling mother of 5, which is enough. That we could stop right there. We really could. She considers herself to be the chief operating officer of her household. Chrystal and her husband, Jesse, reside in a small town just outside of Dallas, Texas. And this is one little known fact, even Chrystal doesn't know. We're cousins. We are actually cousins, even though nobody has Evans in their in their last name. Me and Chrystal are cousins. Just kidding. We're gonna have some fun today, y'all. We're gonna have some fun. Chrystal, so I would love for you to get us started by just telling us, what was it like growing up in the Evans household?
You know, we I'll never forget, my dad would say all the time, he would say, even if your last name is Evans, I would still expect, you still need to. I thought that our house was a pretty good knockoff of the Cosby Family. I would watch the Cosby Show and think, that's kind of like how we are. Mm-hmm. But basically, my parents, of course, while ministry was a priority in their life, did not make our lives all about church. They were very good about seeing our individual bents and kind of leaning in that direction with what they tried to get us involved with doing and what they exposed us to. Priscilla was the one who talked all the time. So my dad said, hey, you should go into communications. Anthony loved to sing, could sing really well. So he said, you should go to a college where you can actually be in a group that sings. Anyway, so they really did a good job of kind of noticing what God had already put in us, and then helping us to understand what it is to stir up those gifts. So that's lots of dinner time. People always think, y'all just had the best devotions at the table. My daddy probably did give the best devotions. However, most of our childhood we spent, laughing and playing and getting in trouble at the table for not being quiet while he was talking, because we weren't really taking him seriously. But it was good. It was good.
That's funny. Now, I heard an interview with Sarah Jakes. Either I heard this or I read this, I don't know, where she was saying when the kids were playing church, that she was not really getting into like the hooping and the, the shouting and all that. And I grew up playing church. I'm not a PK, but I'm a GPK. Like my grandfather was the pastor of my church, and so we hooped, we shouted, we sang, we did all that. Did y'all do that growing up? And if so, what role did you have?
You know what? I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, we did talent shows, we played store, we played school. I don't know that we ever, I'm like, did we ever play church?
I know y'all did. Y'all had to play church.
I'm like, but the thing is our church, at least as we were growing up, was not a hooping church. So we wouldn't have been playing like that. We've loosened up a little bit with time, but my parents are both, they both have very conservative backgrounds. Yeah. What's the name of the church? The Brethren Church, which is very, very conservative. So that is their background.
Okay. So in saying that, did you envision yourself? I know a lot of people have dreams of what they're going to be when they grow up. Did you envision yourself going into full-time ministry and doing anything remotely like what your father and your mother did? I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to ask.
No.
That's what I thought.
No.
So what is it like now doing that? Is it kind of like comical that you're in this role?
No, I mean, no, because, and I'll be honest with you, I still have a really hard time saying the word ministry. Like I really, like even just then as I said it, like it would take everything in me not to also make a face after it. Like, I really,
Why is that? Why is that?
I don't know. I think, I don't know. I just think that everything about my upbringing, like like I told you what my sister's thing was and my brother's thing was. My younger brother was, totally bouncing off the wall. So definitely an athlete. When it came to me, and I'm not saying this sounds terrible, but it's the truth. I don't know that it really mattered what I did. My parents were like, she's just really smart. So they were like, you should go to school and whatever is the top, you should do it. So if you want to go into something having to do with criminal justice, then you should be an attorney. If you are interested in anything business related, okay, well then learn something and then go run a company. Like they were just like, so the idea of being in ministry is just it. Like I wasn't doing anything that made me that wasn't my aim, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And so what has always been a part of my DNA is I've always loved gathering people. So in my role at church, I do a lot of that by doing things related to the women's ministry and gathering women together. And when I came to my dad and said, hey, you know what, I have this idea for some things we can do at our church with the women. It was around that. So it was more a part of my, just my love for people than it was a part of me like trying to be a Bible teacher or, and then everything else has been a domino effect after that. The first book that I actually participated with my dad in was not Kingdom Woman. It was his sermon illustration book. He was like, hey, I have this project. Do you want to help me out? You could make a little extra money. And I was like, okay, sure. This was, 2007. So my kids were 5. The girls were older, but the boys were 5 and 3.
Help,
and I
Lord.
was like, okay, I could just do that. I'm not really writing. And so I literally combed through 30 years of sermon transcripts looking for his illustrations and then grouping them together by category. And then when he turned it in to the publisher said, does your daughter do this for a living? He was like, no. They were like, this is one of the cleanest manuscripts we've ever received because of how well organized it had to be. And I created an index and like my brain just works like, so my point is that was like, I wasn't trying to write. And then my dad said, hey, well, you did this. do you want to write? And I was like, no, not really. So it's been this series of things. And then when you write, then people assume that you have something to say. So then in 2012, 2013, then I started getting calls to speak. And it was the most amazing thing because I don't consider myself to be like a natural speaker. I think that, but I went to this intensive. There was this woman who, her name is Sally Clarkson, and she is kind of an encourager of moms. And she had this intensive, and it was to invite women who thought that they might want to write and speak or gather women, and she wanted to pour into them so that they could do that, but also share with other women. And so I went, and she pulled me to the side because we had to give these little 3-minute talks. She pulled me to the side and she said, you know, I think you're devaluing the fact that you've been in class for 40 years. I think you need to understand that you've been sitting on the front row, learning how to do what you're supposed to do in this season of your life. So don't assume you're not ready. Assume you've been preparing for 40 years. And when she said that to me, I kind of was like, I was thinking, okay, she really wants to be nice to me or whatever. And I went home and I thought about it. And it dawned on me that a lot of the women who were there were struggling in ways I wasn't struggling. I didn't struggle to put together a talk. My roommate was working. She had her talk. She kept rehearsing it and she was working on memory. I didn't think about that talk until I got there. You know what I mean? Like, and when I got there, you know, my thought was, okay, I need an opening story. I need a hook. I need a few words that I repeat. I mean, you know, it just didn't occur to me. And so anyway, all that to say is that I just think that, and not that I haven't had room to improve or working to get better or honing my craft in both either the speaking or the writing. I'm just saying, my path wasn't the path that a lot of people have been on, where they're trying to figure out the doors. I wasn't even looking for the doors. You know what I'm saying? And so God has, so that's why I think the ministry word is hard, because people go into ministry. At least that's the way I think of it. They decide to follow a vocation. You know, God has called them. I just feel like I was sitting at home and my daddy asked me to do something. That's really. And so it's an unintentional falling into, and so I think that's a part of it too. I don't know.
Yeah, I was listening to the message that you just sent out. I don't even know what church you were at.
Yeah, I was at a progressive church in California.
Oh my goodness, Chrystal. Girl, I've heard you speak before, but this particular message, it just really seems like everything came together. Your daddy, everything, all what you talk about that you set up underneath. Because I thought you were going to hoop at the end of it. It was just such a, it really was a well put together message, and all of what you're talking about having sat in seminary by way of your father for 40 years. I could see it. It was such a natural, easy message to listen to hear. It was well organized. So I see all of that. And it's unique what you're saying, because now we're in an age where people pursue ministry like a career, like a calling, like, you know.
Yeah. And, you know, and what's interesting is, and, you know, me and Jesus may have to wrestle a little bit more about this one, but like, okay, this is going to sound terrible, but let me say it and then I'm going to finish I still don't really want to do ministry like that, like as a career. I really, and I'm like, Lord, am I fighting you on this? Not that I don't want to do ministry. I still want to tent make. And here's why. I have a really hard time with ministry being career. I want to do what I want to do to drive income over here and have that fund what I do over here. I have a really, and not that ministry can't be career. I'm just saying for me, and I think that's my corporate background. I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna go over here and we're going to charge for this. And then Jesus is free. And then I'm going to come over here and do this. And because here's the hard part. And I'm not knocking anyone who's doing it. But I just, because ministry costs money, and we're in a day and age when ministry is, can be celebrity driven. Mm-hmm. And so for everything from what people charge to speak, to what you have to pay to go to a conference, to what you have to pay to take a class. Like I'm in the process of creating some things. And one of the things I have expressed to my team over and over again is we need to have the ministry level, the everyday level, and the equipping level. The ministry level is Jesus is free, and I want you to know him, and I want you to know his word. And I can say in that way, yes, I want to minister in that way. In the everyday way, there are some things that because they just cost money. You do a course, you do a class. I just recently held a coffee with Chrystal event. We had to rent a space. But I remember being in the position of being a stay-at-home mom and not working and not having extra money, and still needing to have some everyday encouragement and wanting to make sure that people, for their everyday stuff, for practical stuff, whether that's motherhood or studying your Bible or organizing your house or, having time, creating systems in your life to help you to be productive with your time, that would be every day. And then the reality is there's an equipping level. That is the level where, you and I have talked about like the Proverbs 31 conference. And there are conferences where by design, you are there to learn, to invest in yourself so that you can do something that generates income. And while you may be ministering, there's the business of ministry. And so I just want it to be clear, because I don't ever personally want to be, this is me. I'm not saying this has to be for everybody. I don't personally ever want to be accused of pimping the temple. And I just clearly have that vision in my head of Jesus going in and turning over the tables. And, and I believe that we're supposed to give. And I believe that, God gives us the power to make wealth. And I believe that, every good thing, but for me, and, this is where I am. So I think a part of my calling is to, and maybe this is what I want it to be, and if Jesus don't want it to be that, then he'll let me know, is to say that there's a place for us to be in the marketplace, and to do it well and to represent God well. And then there's the way in which we minister to other people, and always making sure that we have some component of what we do that is not driven by the dollar. Even when I speak, I tithe my time. I look at the number of times I'm going to go out and speak, and I will at least for 10% of those engagements, or maybe more. We don't talk money. I pray about every single engagement that I take. And if I'm supposed to go, we never have that conversation. I just say, I'm coming. Get me there. And, what is your honorarium? However you choose to bless me. So it's just because I never want to forget that regardless of how God blesses and helps me to support my family, that I can trust him. I can trust him with how he chooses to pour back into me. So it's just this unique world in which we live. And because of my parents and their upbringing, my daddy used to join my grandfather on the streets preaching. And a lot of the ministers that he grew up with were bivocational, because the church couldn't afford to help them feed their families. And an age where people literally are on the mission field, supported by the gifts of people. They're not producing these products and it's just, I'm out here doing God's work and I need you to support me. So that upbringing has stayed with my father and then, poured down to us, really wanting to keep the heart of ministry first. And we each do that in a unique way, but really wanting to keep that first. So I totally just went all the way around the world and came back and hijacked your question.
No, that's good. No, because we got to go where the spirit want to go. That's good, Chrystal. And you all up in here. You all, I might have to fall prostrate after we through. But I think that's where we are. And in a way, I feel like it's better to come to the ministry place where you are, not desiring to be there. Because when you desire to be there, like, for example, me, I've longed to be in ministry and tried to figure out, well, Lord, what does it look like for a woman to be in ministry? Because at my small Baptist church that I grew up in, they don't recognize women ministers. So what do you do with that, Jesus? And then you discover Proverbs 31, and they're telling you how to have a blog, how to build a platform, how to write a book, how to get a book deal, all these things. And so you're like, oh, okay, Lord, well, let me follow that. And that does eventually lead to, well, now I'm paying for web hosting. I'm paying for XYZ theme. I'm paying for whatever, product, and I don't have any money. So now I need to create money. And you're in this tug of need money, want to do ministry. How do I make it work? And then there's goo gobs of us. Like, I feel like we went from a few women speakers to now there's a bunch of bloggers and podcasters and YouTubers that we're all kind of doing the same thing, So that's great what you said. I'm not at peace, but
well, no. And let me say, that is the two things. Let me repeat. That is, I'm talking about me. I'm not saying that has to be for everybody. And then the second thing is, I'm saying, I'm not even sure yet if Jesus agrees with that, because he may be saying, you over here trying to create stuff to not feel bad about being in ministry and having to be supported. And I'm coming to it saying, Lord, this is kind of what I think you want me to do. He may wreck that. So we may, play this interview a year from now and I'll be like, yeah, girl, that was when I was trying to build something. The Lord said something different. We might have a totally different. I'm saying right now, I just, my corporate mind. And so that I could totally tell you, it could be that a year from now, I tell you that was me operating it's either me operating in my giftedness because I build things. Like at my church, I like creating things. And so there's some things that I'm working on to help support the ministry efforts that I'm in. But the other part of that is it maybe God tells me, girl, you were trying to build something and I wasn't asking you to do that. So I'm doing what feels like the next thing for me right now. That's where my head is right now. And then all we can do is what we know right now. So ask me in a year and I'll tell you.
That's funny. And I mean, as you're saying that, just listening to that message, and I'm going to post it if I haven't already posted this message, but it was so clear to me that you should be speaking. And I know you want to create something.
No, listen, Priscilla says to me, she said, it is so weird to sit there and watch you speak. I said, why? She said, because that's not what you do. That's not what you grew up doing. That's not what you wanted to do. Like, I'm just looking at you like, where did this come from? I said, join the club. Join the club.
That's funny. It was the message. I'm going to quit talking about it, but it was so good. I'm going to go back and listen to it again. Okay, so let me try to get back to the questions that you got us off of. Did you feel a pressure? Let me ask you this. Did you know you were part of the Evans family? Like, yes. As we know, the Evans dynasty. Yes. I know it's not a dynasty for dynasty's sake. I know it's for the Lord and all that, but it's a dynasty. Did you know that growing up? And did you feel a pressure to have to excel or have to be holy and righteous and have a word? Or did you feel a pressure for that?
No. My parents did an excellent job of making sure that we were Evans first and pastor's kids somewhere else down the line. And that's what I was saying when they would say, you know, even if you were not a pastor's kid, you'd still be in Evans. This would still be our standard. To this day, my grandfather lives in the same house he's been in for 62 years.
Mm.
And literally, like we were talking about this on a recent trip, the houses across the street, I have pictures on my phone. They're boarded up. There are drug dealers on the corner. The man that lives next to my grandfather's, you know, always sweet man, but he's always drunk. I mean, the neighborhood is bad.
Yeah.
And if you look at the street, my grandfather's house, the house where my dad grew up, it literally looks different than all the other houses. It's kept up. It's painted. It has color. And we were saying it's this one house that looks so different from the rest of the street. And we said, you know, this is representative of how this house has been different in this. And you know, the neighborhood has gone down over the years, but my daddy couldn't do everything everybody else was doing. My mama they couldn't do. So there was a separateness that they experienced growing up that they transferred to us. Mm-hmm. And my daddy would say that even if I wasn't a pastor, you're in Evans, you still wouldn't be doing that. So we had a sense of family identity, a strong family. We still have a strong sense of family identity.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's also beautiful. And I joke about you guys having a dynasty. But aside from that, I think just the legacy of family it's incredible to watch and to see. I stalk pretty much all of y'all except for your brother that's the chaplain for
Jonathan, the baby brother.
I don't stalk him. I just don't know where he is, but I find him and stalk him too. But I mean, to just see that legacy through you guys, through your kids. I also stalk Winter and then the daughter. So it's just like, wow, you know, this is what God intended for the family to look like. So as I talk about that, Chrystal, I just want to kind of briefly mention your book, Rescuing the Girl in You, and how you had to be rescued, how even though you grew up in just such an amazing family and had the teachings from Dr. Tony Evans and your mom, what was it like to have to be rescued and to go through that in the public eye?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard, but I will tell you that in fact, I had a family friend ask me. He said, "You don't seem to be bothered for you. You seem to be bothered for everybody else." And I was like, "Yeah, that's about right." I hate to use the word people pleaser because I don't feel like I'm a people pleaser, but I do feel like I really, really care about how other people feel, and I want people to be okay. So I felt bad because of what I put my parents through, because I don't know why I have this on me, but I always had I'll figure it out kind of on me. I just have always had I'll figure it out. This is not the end of the world. I don't know how I'll figure it out, but I'll figure it out. But I felt really bad for the phone call that I had to make to my parents to tell them that I was pregnant is still the hardest phone call I've ever. It's the hardest thing I've ever done was to pick up the phone and call them and tell them that. But that said, the rescuing process for me was more about me figuring out or understanding how I had gotten sidetracked in the first place and how to get back to, you know, like I said, my parents were just like, whatever you do, make sure you go to the top because you can. So there was a high level of expectation that I had placed on me by my family and by my, and for myself. I just expected to achieve. So getting back to what was I supposed to be doing before I got sidetracked with this boy? You know, what was I intending to do?
Right.
Can I, you know, like getting back to that and remembering my worth and value and acting out of a deep rooted belief of value was something that I had to relearn. It was as if I had gotten hit by a Mack truck and had to learn how to walk again. So
Yeah, and that, you know what, I love, one of the things I love about your books, because, and I kind of write like this too, is that you pulled not just from Christian resources, but you also pulled from maybe some counseling resources or some practical things, you know, some how-to steps that, as a person who's grown up in the church, sometimes we miss. I don't know if the word is clinical or the practical, and we're very, very spiritual. So I love that you merged the two
Well, let me tell
worlds.
you, that was a conscious decision. And I've, every now and then I'll look at my little Amazon reviews because I'm just curious what people are saying. And I have to remind myself, the most recent one I read yesterday was, I thought this would have been more of a Bible study. It seemed too fluffy to me and too, she may have used the word worldly, like her. And I remember thinking, and I've said this to a few times, I'll look at certain reviews and be like, okay, it wasn't written for you. It wasn't written for you. It was written for the person who just needs to, who ain't trying to be, who's not angry with God necessarily, or an atheist, or, who doesn't get wigged out about spiritual things, but it is written for the person who just needs everyday language. And if I believe that if it's true, that all truth is God's truth. And just because somebody is not a minister or a preacher, if they say it and it's true, listen, I am amazed. Okay. I am amazed at some of the people that I listen to that are not believers. And I'm listening to them and thinking, that's in the Bible. That is in the Bible. You didn't put a scripture to it. You didn't put a spiritual foundation around that. But what you just said, God already said. So to me, to corroborate, not that the word of God has to be corroborated, but to corroborate it, and to say, hey, here's another way to say this truth, and here's someone else who said it. To me, that only strengthens the point that whether you are coming from a Bible verse in a churchy way, or whether you are reading this book from Brene or or whoever else, it's true. It's true. And that was a conscious decision that I made, and knew that some people weren't going to like that. And I was like, well, I'm not writing for them. So just to speak to the whole thing of deciding who your audience is, I knew I was writing to the girl who didn't want to be on the wrong side of God, but may not have been in church in a while, and wanted to write where she could read and it would be an interesting read to her. And I think, using Brene as an example, I think that woman is really smart. And I think she really has a good finger on the pulse of the topic of shame and forgiveness and, rising strong. And so why not quote her?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it at all. I grew up Baptist. When I went to college, I was full gospel. Then I transitioned to non-denominational. I also went to a Catholic church, and now I'm non-denominational in where I'm a minority, and that's a very different setting. So,
yeah.
So when I come to your book, I'm bringing all that to it, and that's why I don't need you. You don't even have to say Jesus. I know your family. I'm a cousin, so I'm okay. But and I think that's a good point that you just brought out of knowing who your book is for.
You got to know who your book is for. And I'll tell you, I'm so grateful, that they have the book in Target, and I'm so grateful. But let me tell you something. I'm grateful. I'm excited that it's in Target, but I'm grateful because I wrote it for the girl who's not going to church and who's not going to pay money to come to the Christian Women's Conference. I wrote it for the girl who's going to walk by. And I had somebody actually send me a message on Facebook, and she said, I don't know who you are. Wow. I picked up your book because something about the title said, yeah, I'm not here and I need to figure this out. And I opened it up and I read the first chapter and I was in tears. I just need you to know I'm so grateful I ran into your book. And then she talked about her life and what was going on in her life and her wrestle with God. And I was like, it's for you. It's for you. And as happy as I am that the Proverbs 31 did it and all of these things, because and that's why I went back and added the scriptures, because I said, Daddy, I'm your child, so I gotta put some Bible in here. And I went back and said, I gotta put some Bible in here. But there wasn't a whole lot. You'll notice that there wasn't a whole lot of scripture in there. And that was intentional. So when the girl picks it up, if she flips and is like, because there have been seasons in my life where, as much as I love God, I'm like, I don't want you to quote scripture at me. I don't want you to throw the Bible at me. I just need you to talk to me. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to reach the girl who wanted someone to just talk to her, So.
Well, I hope you did the ugly cry after you got that Facebook message or however she messaged you, just knowing that what you wrote, you were supposed to write. And I do want to ask you, I want to go back to your stay-at-home mom.
Yes.
And you decide to start a podcast.
Yes.
How did you come to decide on a podcast? Why not a blog? Why not videos? How did you do that out of not doing anything?
So I was blogging, and I started the podcast as a way to put out more content in addition to blogging. That was easier. I was like, I can just talk and it'll be quicker. You can, if I sit down for 30 minutes and write, I might be good to come up with 500 words. You talk for 30 minutes, you just spoke out 7,500 words. So I was like, I can get more content. And then podcasting made me lazy about blogging, because why would you sit there and labor to write something when you could just get on a mic and just say it? So one of my goals this year is to write, because while people don't read, and then there's the whole "are blogs dying?" and I don't know if I agree with all that. I think that the principle, though, the discipline of putting your butt in the chair and writing for something you want to say, for something you want to share with your tribe, I think that is important. So I'm going to be getting back to doing that. I think the days of people coming to your blog 5 times a week are over, but I do think that having content that lives somewhere. So if people search something, and I've talked about how I plan my day, or I've talked about how I studied the Bible, or I've talked about, my parenting stuff or my marriage stuff, or I've talked about productivity, that stuff lives somewhere, because podcasts are not searchable. So that's the thing. You're either going to pay somebody to transcribe your podcast, which for a 30-minute one, you're going to shell out $45 if you do it the normal way, unless you have a friend who loves you, or you come back later, listen to your own podcast, make it into a blog post, so you have content that lives on your blog that's searchable. So I will be getting back to that. Video, I can answer that. I can tell you real quick why I didn't do video. Because I don't like getting dressed. I don't like getting dressed. I mean, right now, this is about as good as it gets. My hair, I didn't really do it. It just kind of doesn't, has a little something left on it. Put a little pink on my lips, no makeup. This necklace was easy. This is a muumuu. I just threw a sweater on over it just so I look kind of decent. But I will be doing more video, because video, it is what it is. I have actually a YouTube show that I've recorded. It will launch actually January the 16th. In addition to that, I told my assistant, I said, look, when I'm dressed, when you can look at my calendar and you see I'm dressed, let's pull out the camera and get some content done. I have people who ask me questions all the time. I have a long list of AMAs. So I'll be recording those and then splitting those up and releasing those on Facebook. And so I'm trying to, but the issue is getting dressed. I like putting my hair in a bun. I wear yoga pants every day and a t-shirt. And if you follow me on social media, it is what it is. However it is, that's what you get. But I want to put up some solid content, which means I have to look decent. And that's why I haven't done that.
I love this about you, Chrystal, that you are so honest. I have a quick question. Are you hearing some feedback?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, well, we'll just keep going.
But is it bad? Do you need me to?
No. It's gone now. It's gone.
Okay.
For women who are, maybe they're stay-at-home moms, or maybe they're working women, and they feel this kind of nudging inside of them, like, I want to do something else. I don't know where to start. What would you say? And then I would say get the book, because you're very practical in terms of giving some specific details to start with. But what would you say right now if there's somebody that's listening and they just don't know what to do?
So I would say, let me give this super quick example. I was working temp in a real estate office one time, and this lady was just this boss lady, and we were talking about we were just talking one day, and she just was talking about the people that she loved to hire. She was asking about my kids, and at the time I just had one daughter. She said, I love hiring moms that have been at home but that have some kind of skill that come back into the workplace. She said, because they make the best managers. They've been practicing managing people and projects for years, and they come in and they just apply that skill in a corporate setting. What I would say is, you have the opportunity when you're home with kids, when you're in the quiet years, to hone your skills. Everything from, yes, you're writing, but I give my best talks. I discover my best talks from teaching my children. If I can teach my children, tell them a story, keep them interested, my kids, and it didn't dawn on me until one of my kids said to me, well, I heard myself say to my kids as I was teaching them, okay, now in closing, and I was like, and then my son said, one time he said, are you going to just do Bible study this morning? Are you going to preach to us? So I realized then that when I am studying scripture and breaking it down for my kids and explaining it to them, I am practicing that skill. I'm practicing that skill. When you write, whether you're writing your mommy chronicles and what's happening in your everyday, or if you're doing a Bible study, or if you're sharing a lesson that you've learned, or something beautiful that you want to share that you've seen, heard, tasted, touched, or experienced, you are honing that skill. It doesn't matter who your audience is or who you're writing for. The fact that you are showing up every day. And so this idea of faith booking, like scrapbooking with the journaling, whatever, I just think that we have to understand that we need to write for the audience that we have access to. That gives us practice for the audience we want access to. And I think if you are faithful to honor the desire that you have, and yes, cultivate it. Sure, take a class. Yes, join this Facebook group. Yes, listen to what other people have done and understand their process. But understand that where you are right now is the place that you're supposed to practice. So practice. And then look for the opportunities to grow in that. Speak at the MOPS group. Lead the Bible study at church. Ask, hey, pastor, would you like to have me write devotionals? I mean, one of the things I do every week, and it again, not thinking this is preparation for anything. We started small groups at my church, and we do them with different types of curriculum. But every fall, we all are doing small groups based on my dad's studies. Well, somebody has to write devotionals for that. So every week on a Wednesday, he sends me an audio. He just about what he's going to talk about on Sunday. He sends me a list of scriptures and his 3 major points, and I write the devotional for the church.
Wow.
And then that bloomed into a team of writers writing it, because it was like every week, and like I couldn't be sick, and but the reality is that came from Dad. Like, we just need to study what you said on Sunday. Well, all right, put a devotional together. I don't know how to do that. Sure you do. Because again, remember, I'm the kid where my parents go. She can do it. She can figure it out. So I looked around at what other devotionals look like and figured it out. But that didn't come because, no, I was trying to write a Bible study. That came because we need to study, go deeper with what we already heard on Sunday. So let me do something at my church that supports that. So if Lifeway called me tomorrow and said, hey, do you want to write a Bible study? I'd be like, maybe. Okay. I guess I'll just take what I've done already and do it. Because this Bible study that I did for She's Still There, I didn't write. My sister's advice was, if they're going to pay a writer to do it, you already wrote the book, let the writer do it. And I said, okay. So I still actually have not written my own Bible study. But I wouldn't be afraid to do it because I've been practicing and doing it at church for the last 8 years.
I love that.
Bloom where you're planted.
That what you've just said and shared by way of just talking about your family is something I've heard illustrated so much as far as one serving ministry. And that what you're doing, I don't think anybody knows about that except maybe the people at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. But you're doing that in private. That's your free Jesus.
Yeah, my free Jesus.
That's your free Jesus. It's ongoing.
Yeah.
And it's aside from what you do in the public. And then also, I love what you said about your kids, which makes me think about, people talk about balance. And I've heard some people say balance. It doesn't make sense. You can't balance. You have to have harmony. How? How? What do you do? Advice when you're juggling family, you're juggling work, you're juggling side hustle, you're juggling ministry, free Jesus, pay Jesus. You're juggling all that. Chrystal, help us.
Well, I think that we have to realize that while we may be able to do a lot of things as women, we're not supposed to do all things in the same season. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that, excuse me, the second thing is that you need to understand, this is a principle I will probably write about or speak about soon because I keep hearing myself say it, but ground zero. So the Twin Towers, we know ground zero, the Twin Towers fell. And from that point, they built something else there. But they had to clean up and get back to a good baseline. You have to know what your baseline is. And as soon as your baseline is in rubbles, as soon as your baseline isn't clear, is not firm, is not level, then you deconstruct until you can get back to that, because you can't build anything that will stand unless you have a good baseline. What is a good baseline? If I'm not cooking for my family, something's out of whack. I mean, now, of course, we have a day where we do the drive-through. I'm talking about as a way of living. If we're never at the dinner table, it's out of whack. If I don't have time for the word of God in the morning, it's out of whack. If I'm not working out, it's out of whack. If I'm stressed out and screaming at my kids, it's out of whack. If my husband and I haven't had a date in a while, it's out of whack. If I am feeling drained and my soul is depleted, it's out of whack. And then I have to say, okay, there's something in my life that has to go, something in my life that has to change, something in my life that I have to do differently, because I cannot effectively build unless I have an effective, good base. And that would be my ground zero. So I know what my ground zero is. You have to know what your ground zero is when you are operating at the best of who you are. Know that balance is not a destination. It is a journey. And as soon as you feel like you have it, you lose it. It's like working out your core. If you're holding some weights and standing on a ball, your core never disengages. You are constantly working to keep balance. Life is the same way. But you do know when you've fallen off the ball. So you gather your druthers, you maybe put the weights down, get your balance again, hold everything steady, and then you start again. So what is your ground zero? Write it down, post it. When are you your best you? And then know that if anything that you're doing stretches you beyond you being your best you for the season that you're in, then something either needs to go, it needs to wait, or it needs to shift.
Wow. I feel like that was your next book or podcast, or I don't know what it was, but I'm gonna go back and watch that. Okay, so we have talked about most everything except for now. You are a writer and a speaker for Proverbs 31, and you, to my knowledge, are the only brown face in the lineup. I want to ask you to share if that is, and I recognize that you work with these people, and I follow them. So I want to ask you if that is a challenge, if it is different. Have you noticed? Whatever you can share on that, because this is a Facebook group specifically for Christian women communicators of color. So I would love for you to just kind of talk about that topic. And I've been to Proverbs 31 twice. She speaks. I've been twice.
So I will tell you how this happened. Just first of all, I was at my church on a day I was not supposed to be there. There was a meeting happening in my dad's conference room, and I heard a friend's voice, and I peeked in to say hi. I didn't know who she was in a meeting with. She said, "Hey," it's my dad's marketing lady. She said, "Hey, come in. I want you to meet someone." I walked in, and Lisa Hurst was sitting there. That day, I had written a post. It's called what is it? It's something about my black boys or something. What if I love my boys or something like that? Anyway, it was Trayvon Martin had just been killed, and I had
Yes.
written a post about what I would what I have to tell my boys. That day, someone had sent Lisa Turkhurst my blog post. So she said, "Hi, I'm Lisa Turkhurst." I said, "Oh, I know who you are. It's nice to meet you." She said, "It's so funny. I've read your blog for the first time today." I said, "Oh, really?" She said, "I loved your writing. Would you consider writing for Proverbs 31?" And she looked at her business
What?
partner and she said, I'm so sorry. I know we have a process for this. And she said, "I never do this." And the lady said she never does this. So on a day where I wasn't supposed to be there, in a room I wasn't supposed to be in, on the day that I had written a blog post that someone else had sent it to Lisa, like that's how that happened. So I wasn't trying to like do that.
Right.
So what I can tell you is Lisa and I have talked about it, and there is a desire for diversity at Proverbs 31. But I wouldn't say before diversity, in conjunction with the diversity is a desire to have a voice that fits, a voice
Got you.
that fits. And so just like, you can have a conference and you know who will be a fit for your audience and who will be a fit. So there's that. And we've talked at length about the desire. And in fact, when I went to the offices and I made some assumptions about how many people of color would be there. And there were more than I thought that worked in the offices.
Okay.
And so there is a desire there. I mean, Lisa's heart for sure is that, as she's adopted 2 kids, of color. And so there's a natural desire there. I think there is a challenge, and this is not just for women of color, to have a voice where people can consistently know from day to day that when they're getting a devotional from somebody different every day, that there is still a certain stamp that Proverbs 31 has. And I think that's more or less the goal. That's why Compel exists, because it's, how can we teach people to have this stamp and give people an opportunity to do that? When I did the Proverbs 31 study, she's still there. They had the live call, and there were 6 weeks of calls. I only did 1 of those. And the other 4 of those were women of color, because that's who I know. So Valerie Burton was on there, and Jada Edwards was on there. My cousin Winter Pitts was on there. I mean, so the goal was to have to share other women who I knew who had voices and who would be well received. So I think it's just a matter of introduction. And that's just the reality of everything when you're looking at where people of color may not be as much. It's just, you got to have the introduction. And so that's something that I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do, and hope to have a hand in doing more often, of not just there, just in general, in every place that I go.
I love what you are saying, Chrystal, because before I started this group, it was something that I kind of wrestled with, not initially, but after my second She Speaks, after being a part of Compel and being a contributor to Proverbs 31 and being kind of in this blogging community, I began to ask the question, where are we? And I think it was right at the height of the string of I don't know, was that 2016 when we just had so many police situations? Yeah. Before America became what America is, that's when I started to ask these questions. So I've analyzed this a lot in different settings and said, well, maybe they don't know about people, or maybe we're not there. But I see the conversation is happening on different fronts. Some people are angry, which I don't know.
That's a general. I was just talking to a sweet girl in Carolina. In fact, I need to get a hold of her and have her on my podcast, because I just said, why are you angry? Like, we feel the same way about this particular topic. I'm not angry though. And we came to the conclusion, she was, I think it just turned 30, that it may be generational. She said some things to me and I was like, I would never see it that way. So I think some of how we perceive the layers of how things happen, it really is largely generational. I think justice for millennials is a thing. It's not for people who are in their 40s. And it's not for people who, my parents who came through the civil rights movement. They're happy to have what they are. I expected to have what I have. The millennials are like, y'all left everything undone. It's still not finished. I mean, it's just a generational thing. So
we want it fixed now. Millennials want it fixed
now. Yes, exactly. So I think that there's I think that change happens because people um, are feel that there has been some disillusionment with what should have happened, what should be available. And I do think that there is always work that we can do. I think in a world where people see color, I don't care what we say. I had to convince my oldest son at 8 he was black. No, I'm not. I'm brown. I'm tan. No, honey, you're black. People are gonna say you're black. But these poor little homeschool boys, you know. But anyway, but but the reality is that's the world we live in. So I think there will always be a place for introductions. And I think we all just have to figure out to what level we are able to give them and what level we're able to facilitate them based on the relationships that we have. So I just think it's a conversation we need to have, and I think it's a conversation between generations we need to have, so that we can address it. Because I had someone tell me that, you know, she said, you're not really addressing on your podcast social issues. And I said, that's not. And she said to me, but you have a platform, so you should use it to address it. And I was like, should I? But I mean, it was a good conversation for me to have, because that's not my first mind is not that. Not to say it won't be. I'm just saying it will never be if we don't have that conversation. It will never be if somebody doesn't say to me, well, that's great, you have access to that, but what are you doing to help someone else have access? You know, so, and, you know, and what is my role? What is God calling me to? These are all, I just think, just like we say in the white and black world, we need to talk. I think the millennial and the baby boomer and everything in between, Gen X, we just have to talk within our, you know, our spheres of race and influence and culture. We still have to have those conversations. And I have to be open to somebody saying to me, I need you to do more, or this is why. And I got to be free to say to them, this is or is not my calling.
Right. So
I love to have the conversation, though, that we have to start there.
This is a part 2. We need a part 2, Chrystal. I don't know how we're gonna do it.
I'm all in my feels right now about that.
No, I know it's complicated.
It is
it's messy, it's uncomfortable, and I believe that Jesus is smack dab in the middle of it, because he came in and wrecked up stuff and messed with people, you know, everybody, the Pharisees, the Sadducees. I mean, they was all just like, wait, what?
And then there were a lot of conversations where people were wanting to get into the nitty gritty, and he didn't go there.
True.
So we have to know what we're called to do in what situations and with whom. But what he did do every single time was have the conversation every single time. So I think we have to start honestly with our spheres of influence racially and culturally, because we can't have conversations out here that we're not having in here.
Right.
We just can't.
Right. And that was the other piece. Because I was a part of some Facebook groups, and I was saying to myself, they seem like they're supporting each other a little bit more than we do. I don't know why, but I would like to see us, when our sister wins, be the first to be like, go girl, get it, or yes, or if one sister knows how to do a podcast that she's willing to share.
Right.
These are the steps. This is the app that I use, or this is the software that I'm using, that we're not trying to keep it to ourselves. Like, oh, I can't tell her because she might get ahead before me. And, you know, so I recognize, Chrystal, I hear you, that there were some things amongst ourselves. We need to, you know, what is it the people say when you don't share our family business outside of it? Right. We need to handle some family business.
Some family business.
I think we're starting to handle it. And one of the ladies in the group, or two of them, Titania Clergan Page, is getting ready to write for the first 5.
Yeah.
And then also Karen Meck. Am I about to say her name? Human Resources Director.
Oh, yes.
She's in our group as well. She just hey guys, if you're watching this. So I feel like conversations are happening. People are having introductions. Exposure is happening. People are talking on both sides. Everybody, all races. I'm seeing this conversation happen. So I think things are changing. It's just something we're gonna have to pray.
Yeah.
And continue the conversation. But So that's good. That's pretty much all of my questions, I believe. Let me look down here. Okay. Oh no, it's not. It's not, but that's all right. Okay, we're gonna end on top 5. Here we go. First thing that comes to your head. Person you'd like to meet.
Oprah.
You're the second. A lot of people say that. Feat you'd like to accomplish.
A feat I'd like to accomplish. First thing that this is not a feat, but go to Australia.
Okay. Guilty pleasure.
Dark chocolate almonds, covered almonds.
Yes. Favorite song.
Anything by Travis Green.
Yes. Dream destination. So you can't say Australia.
So besides Australia, I would love to do like it's not a destination, but just like a long cruise, like a 2-week, 3-week, one of them long cruises.
Amen.
Y'all both available.
Little known fact.
A little known fact. My heating blanket on my bed is the favorite thing in my life. Summer, winter, fall, spring, don't matter. It's on.
That's fascinating. Cartoon character.
Bugs Bunny.
Desired superpower.
Flying.
And favorite food.
Pizza.
And favorite verse.
Jeremiah 29:11.
Yes. Well, it has. Oh, you know what? There's one last question, Chrystal. For those of us that have been following your podcast, about your toe, did you?
It's still a thing.
Okay.
It's still a thing. I have to go to the doctor about 4 times a year to get an x-ray to make sure the tumor does not reappear. It still hurts, not as bad as it used to, but you better not step on it because the whole neighborhood will know. Some days I don't feel it. Some days I'm popping Tylenol. It's still a thing. But you know what? It's still on. So I'm grateful.
Wow. I didn't know that much. Thank you for sharing that much. We'll be praying for you. Guys, if you want to follow Chrystal, you can go to her website, Chrystal. It's crystalhurst.com.
Yeah, that or crystalevanshurst.com.
Chrystal Evans Hurst. Follow her on social media. Definitely subscribe because I know she's going to have some new things coming out, some products. Not Jesus, free Jesus, but some paid Jesus products. And then get her book. I have read it. It is very good. I had excerpts to read, but I just didn't have an opportunity to. And Chrystal, if there's anything else you want to say before we close, I kept you too long, but it's because I'm so excited. Is there anything else you want to say to close us out? Feel free.
Cultivate your gifts. Stir up your gifts, the Bible says. There is a gift in you. Be a connoisseur of the soul of you. Know what God put in there, discover it, look for it, and then treat it well, because there is only one of you in this world, and whatever you're supposed to do, even if someone else can do it, they will not be able to do it the way you would. So don't sell yourself short. Don't sell yourself fast, but make sure that you sow completely and fully into the season that you're in so that you don't leave anything on the table. And that when you see Jesus face to face, you show up and say, I did something with what you left me to cultivate. That's what I would say. Cultivate your gifts.
Amen. Ladies, we have been given such a gift. Please sow into Chrystal's ministry and bless her. And I'll see you guys next month. It's been a pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye. Let me hang up.